Good evening. Hey man, how are you guys doing tonight? Good evening. Can you tell we've only got a few panel members here? They're coming in late. Like we didn't just get out of a meeting or something. They're coming in now. How's everybody doing tonight? Y'all glad to be here? Man, we're so excited. I told the panel that we were going to be starting. I said, guys, I anticipate 100 people in the building and a few thousand watching online. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and being a part. I know and I believe with all of my heart that healing comes through hearing. How many of y'all have been in relationships, whether you call it marriage, a co-worker, maybe living in the same house, you're just a roommate, and you're frustrated, you're irritated at them because of something they did. But when you begin to talk to them and you find out why they did what they did, immediately you're like, oh, that makes sense. Because there's a shift that begins to take place in our hearts when we properly identify the motives. There's a difference between perception and motives. Everybody say amen. Hold on one more time. There's a difference between perception and motives. Amen. And what that means is you may perceive one thing, but once you begin to find out the intent or the motive behind it, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. I get it. And the purpose of tonight is for us to begin to hear. Because when we hear the hearts, when we hear the stories, things begin to change. And tonight we want you all to hear the stories. We're still missing 1, 2, 3 people. They are here, but they haven't come out yet. Well, 2 of them are here, and they haven't come out now. All right, there they go. They're coming out. And we've got 1 who is still not here. That's Lauren, but she will be here. 81 is locked down, is what I've been told. Thinking maybe an accident. And we've got multiple people that have not made it here tonight because of 81 in the traffic there. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And when Lauren comes up, we are not going to judge her for being late because she has a good excuse. I keep cutting out. I'm not really sure what that is. But I'm going to another mic. Microphone check. Microphone check. Mic. Hit him. Should I give it to Tyree? All right, guys. Let me open up with a scripture reading and prayer, and we're going to get started tonight. Let me tell you that you may be offended, you may be stretched, you may cry. There may be some deep emotional stories that grip you and make you see yourself in them. It may trigger something. It may challenge you. The goal tonight is for us to just start having hard conversations that, quite frankly, we don't have. Tonight we're just going to hear stories, experiences connected to prejudiceness. You know, a lot of times we throw around the word racism, don't we? Can I tell you that not everything's racism? Sometimes it's narcissism. I think a lot of people are just so prideful and arrogant and self-absorbed, and they maybe were beat up too much as a kid. They got the short man syndrome that now they just want to take it out on everybody else. Some people just need Jesus, and they are so miserable and they're so far from Jesus that they treat everybody horribly. I think too quick we call things racism. I think a lot of times, if we're real honest, it's not racism, it's just people are hateful. Pastor Tyree will talk a little bit about racism here in a minute. Racism, in its most accurate definition, is when one race believes that they are superior above another race. But prejudiceness can be among any race and any people group. Matter of fact, I think that you can be racist of your own group because you believe another race is more superior than, unfortunately, maybe your own race. But we'll dissect a lot of that here in more in just a moment. But let me just open up by reading Ecclesiastes chapter 4. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. So 2 are better than 1 because if one falls, the other one can lift the other one up. Then it goes on to say, for if they fall, one will lift the other one up, but woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. How many of y'all would admit today in our world, it seems like living in isolation is more popular than living in community? I believe that this is an attack of the enemy, because when we live isolated, when we live in our little bubbles, it feels more convenient because you can't get hurt. It feels safer because you don't need to be vulnerable. But the problem is when you live in isolation, when you fall, no one's there to help you up. Then it goes on to say, again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? And then verse 12. Though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him. So you may not be able to overpower. You can be overpowered if you're by yourself, but 2 can withstand him. And then it says, and a 3-fold cord cannot easily be broken. When we stand alone, it's hard to stand. But what's happening in our nation is people are tired, because they feel like there are so many different groups and there's isolation. And I believe that there's maybe the greatest revival of all times that's about to hit the church, because we're identifying that it's not a black and white, Republican, Democrat. There's not a socioeconomical level or status, but we are together standing in solidarity saying, hey, you know what? We're followers of Jesus. And it's when we stand together and hear people that don't look like us, that don't vote like us, that don't have an upbringing like me, but we're going to stand together because the Bible says to have one mind, and that's the mind of Jesus. It's when we come together that we're not easily broken. And my prayer tonight is that we can start hearing, that we can start healing, that we can start standing together. Does that sound like a good plan, guys? I'm going to open up with prayer. Father, thank you so much for this conversation that we're having tonight. We invite you into this event. We invite you into this conversation. Lord, last week we as a panel, we met and tears were shed. Emotions were high. People felt uncomfortable sharing and asking questions. There were stories told, Lord, that brought back old wounds, trauma, triggers. Lord, but at the end of it, it was so healthy and beautiful. And my prayer is what happened last week will happen again here today, that it'll be authentic, that it'll be real, that it'll be genuine, that it'll be heartfelt. Holy Spirit, be in our conversation and allow us to hear. Allow us to empathize. Allow us to shut off wanting to just quickly answer and simply hear. Holy Spirit, please have your way, not only here in this building, but also to everyone who's watching online. May this begin the process of healing in our church, in all the churches, in this region, and across the world. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. All right, we're going to get started. Tyree's going to go first. Everyone who's going to share is going to introduce, give their name before they start. So here we go.
Good evening. My name is Tyree. Some may know me as Pastor Tyree. Whoop, whoop. What's up? I'm honored to be here. As Pastor Ray said, I want to go over some definitions because I think some definitions get thrown out there and we kind of like gunsling them. And the first definition I want to talk about is the word racist. And the word racist is not you looking at me and saying the black guy over there in the black shirt. That just means that you have vision. Racism is when you say, oh, the black guy over there in the black shirt, and you think you're more superior than me because I'm black. That's racism. So when we say we're colorblind, colorblind doesn't give you like a dismissal. Colorblind, when you say that phrase, I guess we all understand what you mean, but I want you to see who I am. I just don't want you to judge me for the color of my skin. I think Martin Luther King said it best. He has a dream that one day his children will live in a world where they'll be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Because once you judge someone by the color of their skin and you think you're more superior, that's racist, and that's racism. So I want to make sure we get that definition out there correctly, because the media has a lot of us thinking everything is racist because you speak about another race, and that's not the truth. Now, prejudice, the root word of prejudice is to prejudge. It's literally in the word prejudice. To prejudge a person, to prejudge a political party. We have all kinds of prejudices. We prejudge a lot of situations. That's not racism. You're just prejudging a situation. And we all have prejudices. We are conditioned to prejudge certain things. When you see someone with red hair, what's the first thing you think of? What has media taught you to think? Firecracker, they're hot-tempered. When you see someone with glasses, what do you think? Intelligent, nerd, smart, right? When you see a white guy with a bald hair, not because he's losing his hair, but because he purposely shaved all his hair off, right? What do you think of? Skinhead. See a black person tatted up, what do you think of? When you see someone with a female with blonde hair, we got jokes for them, right? So we're conditioned to prejudge situations. So we all have prejudices, right? Breathe.
Say right.
Breathe.
You can
okay.
say it.
It's okay. We all have prejudices,
right?
But our prejudices, they aren't racist until you believe that you are more superior than another race.
Right.
Are we there? So when your news station begins to throw racists out there, you now know the right lens to look at that through. Okay? Okay, all right, I know, look, I deal with young people. I know about neural pathways and new ways of thinking. Some of y'all are later in age and you're just now understanding this. And it's okay. It's okay to breathe on it. It's okay to breathe on it. Now, a little personal story. Growing up, I had to learn my parents taught me how to navigate in a white male-dominated society. Uh-oh, here he goes, right? Because we got to be honest, we do live in a white male-dominated society. And white males, I'm not saying you got to be sad for that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's the reality of what it is. And so what do I mean by they taught me how to navigate? It sounds sad to say, but it's almost, in my way of interpreting, it was almost like they taught me how to be smaller, how to not be so like over the top. Because once you receive this over the top, and when I was growing up, I was a skinny boy, believe it or not. I was half the man I am today. But even in that mode, I realized that I had to talk softer around certain people, had to smile a lot when I saw you. Some of you welcomed me into your circle because I smiled a lot. And I shook your hand. How you doing, brother? And I was loud in your circle because I was the approachable black guy. My parents taught me how to do that. They taught me how to do that. And it's even so much to where now when the whole race issue came up, I had pastors from other states calling me to have a conversation with their congregation because they don't have anyone in Tennessee. And I'm like, you called all the way up to Pennsylvania to find a black person you can talk to. And so you'll hear that the majority of black males that are allowed in many white circles have made themselves approachable so they can fit in your circle. And it's the reality of things. And so this has allowed me to be on stages that I probably never would have been on. It allowed me to be in jobs and in positions. I was youth pastor here for a season, and I was very approachable to you. Now imagine if I was the perceivable black guy that many of y'all maybe picture when you think of black guy, and now I'm your youth pastor. Now what? You see what I'm saying? Because some of y'all just giggled right now. And that's the reality of things, that I had to make myself appear to be small. Now to peel back the curtain a little bit, I lived in a two-parent household. I was privileged. I was privileged as a young black man growing up. Two-parent household. Two parents that loved me. Man, took me to church. A three-bedroom house. Had a yard big enough we had a riding lawnmower to mow that joint, right? But I was still called a nigger, still called big lip, still called porch monkey, still told to go back to Africa from kids that were much more less privileged than me. So it taught me no matter what you achieve, Tyree, you're still going to be that thing because of what you look like. Now, how can I fight against that? How can I hide that? I can't. And so there comes trauma, and there comes certain little key words and triggers that if you don't condition yourself to not respond to. See, I don't have like the ability or the privilege to like lash out and be angry. Because if I do, whoa, what are you doing? Calm down. I don't have that privilege. I have to stay small. My two most recent issues when it comes to prejudice or racism, well, this one is racist. I was on vacation last year in South Carolina, and we have this area where we give high fives and fist bumps on golf carts. And high five and fist, well, now you could do that back then, a year ago. High fiving random people. And so we're going around this loop, and we're high fiving, and this girl looks at me. She's a preteen. Young, she couldn't have been past middle school. I'm believing she's like 10. High fiving. She looks at me, she said, ew, he's black. He needs to go back where he came from. Pastor Tyree, she said that to. She said that to Pastor Tyree. Yeah, to your Pastor Tyree. She has no idea that I'd be the first one in the whole development to probably jump in front of her if a bullet came. But she sees me for my skin, and she hears that at a table. She probably hears those people. Look at those people. She sees that, and she looks at me. Ew, he's black, he needs to go back where he came from. Now, a year ago, that was the rhetoric. If those ladies that were in politics don't like it, they can do what? Go back to their country. So she's hearing this at a table, I'm assuming, and she looks at me and she says that. Now, I have to stay small. I don't have the privilege to go up and yell at the dad on the golf cart. Because if I do, now what happens? See, I told you, look. See? I don't have that ability to do that. So what do? Grown man, 42-year-old black male, I pull over to the side and cry my face off. Because it hurts. No matter what I achieve, no matter what stage I've been on, a 10, 11-year-old can still look at me and say that. It still hurts, and it brings me back to the trauma of words when I was younger. And I go home and I don't dare tell my in-laws because I want to ruin vacation for everybody, right? I got to hold it in. I got to hold that stuff in because I want to ruin it for everybody. I go home and just cry on my wife. My kids didn't even know. The real part of me wanted to punch dad. Well, I wanted to snatch the girl off the golf cart. But that would just look very violent. I don't have the right to do that. I don't have the right to approach dad either. I guess I could, but I don't have the right to do that. And then recently, my daughter's in our neighborhood, and she hears a guy, middle school guy saying, that black girl over there, black just so she can hear it. She comes in upset, she comes in, and you know what I don't have the privilege to do? I don't have the privilege to go talk to a middle school boy for what he said to my daughter. Imagine being a dad and feeling like you don't have the ability to approach a young man for what he says to your baby girl. I can stand up on the stage at a school and speak to hundreds of students, but in that situation, I can't speak to a student because of the culture that we live in right now. And that hurts. That hurts. And so that's a little lens, that's a little story, a little backdrop of what it, I'm not saying of every black male, but of this black male that would literally probably step in front of a bullet for anyone in here. That push somebody out of the way. Matter of fact, a girl rear-ended me in Greencastle today. Boom! And she's like, oh, I get out the car. She's like, oh. And I see it in her eyes. And the first thing I say is, are you hurt? Can I pray for you? And she's like, because I know that sounds foreign. To her, it probably sounds very foreign. And so that's just a little thought to ponder on, to think on. Do you have to make yourself small in any situation? Or you look like as the man because you come across forceful?
Thank you.
I'm Andrea McCall. Most of you that attend here know me. I'm married to a black man, and my life would have been much easier had I married a white man. And I say that, I hope you hear my heart when I say that I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I fell in love with who I fell in love with, and I'm glad that that was God's plan for my life and for our family. But the reality is, I grew up in Williamsport, Maryland, 90.5% white. I grew up in a family who, they didn't have exposure to anybody who looked different than them. And so the reality is that my life would have been much easier had I married a white man, but God. When I shared with my family that I was marrying my husband, I didn't have the privilege of hearing, yeah, I'm so excited for you, when's the date, can I help you plan the wedding, whatever. I didn't hear those things. I heard, don't expect me to be the referee in the family for you. You're gonna have to deal with those things on your own, knowing that I had a lot of people in my family who were prejudiced. Without even knowing my husband, without even knowing the godly man that he was and is today. They prejudged him because of the color of his skin. After my husband and I were married, our desire was to have children right away. A couple of months after we were married, I became pregnant, and we were ecstatic. And then at 3 months, I had a miscarriage. And instead of receiving the sympathy and care that I should have had from some of my closest family members, it was said that the miscarriage was probably due to sin in my life because of who I married. And I had to carry that in the midst of my grief and pain. To hear those words said. Years later, after my husband and I went through years of infertility, we adopted a son, and he is biologically white. And I had family members who were breathed a sigh of relief because we adopted a white son. We now to this day, fast forward, we have our white son who we adopted, and we have 2 biracial sons who I love with all of my heart. They don't have the privilege of, thank you. They've never spent the night with different members of our family. They don't have the relationship with some members of their family that their friends have, and my heart grieves for them for that. I'm trying to think of everything I wanted to share. Backing up to when I did get married, my father didn't walk me down the aisle, and I was sharing this with my son. It's not because he refused to. I didn't ask him to. I was afraid of him saying no. My father has now passed away, and that has been, our relationship was mended before that, but that is something that I don't have. I don't have a picture of my father walking me down the aisle. When my two oldest sons were younger and we were visiting family, there was a conversation going on in the other room, and they were talking about a member of the family who was getting married, and they were marrying someone who I guess the family didn't really approve of, but one of my little nephews, who was probably 7 or 8 at the time, said, well, at least he's not marrying a black woman. I was in the room, and I had married a black man, and I was left to, everyone was looking at me like wanting me to make the situation right, but what could I do? I don't know what else to share. I feel like.
How about, can you share what that alluded to about, remember you asked the question last week about how there's been some black women, I think, in particular, who have made reference to you taking one of their men. Can you talk about that?
My husband, you will not find a greater man than my husband. He is a godly man. He's a faithful man. He's loyal. He's an amazing man, and I'm very blessed. And so not only have I experienced racism and prejudice from my side of the family, but there have been times when I have had hurtful things said to me or about me by black women, referencing that I took one of the good ones. And I have always been very open and have been very welcoming to relationships of any color, and that was something that was really hurtful to me, and I didn't understand that. And so I asked last week Yamali and Dominique, and they were able to share some insight with me about that.
So Yamali's going to talk. So just kind of thought is, here you have a white woman who marries a black man, and a good black man, a man of God, a good man. And because of your racist, prejudiced family, it's caused all kinds of problems. And you're thinking you're willing to surrender your own family for standing up for what is right. And you married outside of your race, if you will. And then following that, you get criticism from people, in your mind, in the race that you're protecting. And now there's black women who are mad that you took one of theirs. And I know that was hurtful, because now you've got stuff coming from both sides. And Yamali really spoke to that, and I just want us to continue this open dialogue. So you have the floor.
Hi, I'm Yamali, and when we had this conversation, this is the first time I had ever heard someone vocalize that they notice and they hear the comments and they see the looks in the store as a white woman from other black women and not understanding. And my parents separated when I was 7. I had a relationship with my dad, but he's kind of been in and out of my life. Our relationship was actually estranged for 12 years. I didn't hear from him, didn't talk to him. So I was explaining to Andrea, you have these women, the statistics are high in the black community about men, fathers who walk away, who leave, who are just not around, incarcerated, populating the earth and not sticking around. So you have these women who feel rejection already, like my dad don't want me, he don't want a relationship with me. And so I grew up in Philadelphia. I moved here when I was around 13. I grew up around all black community in Philadelphia. But then when I moved to Hagerstown, it wasn't as diverse as it is today. But I remember being in middle school and hearing boys say, well, white girls are pretty, white girls are beautiful, like black women, y'all have nice bodies, you have a cool personality, but the white girls, they're pretty, they're beautiful, like, that was like the idol. And so you would hear that from the black guys, you would hear that from the white guys, the Hispanic guys. So here I am thinking, okay, so my dad doesn't want me. Other races, it's very rare that you see other races attracted to black women. And so now you have our own brothers who don't want us either. So if our fathers don't want us, and men outside our race don't want us, and now men within our race don't want us, then who wants us? Who's gonna see us as beautiful? Who wants a relationship with us? And so that's where the hurt and the bitterness and the animosity, that's where that comes from. It's not anything that you've personally done. And you did get a good one, because guess what? So many of them are in prison. So many are on the streets. So many just aren't around and not present in their kids' lives. You did get a good one, and good for you. It has nothing to do with anything that you're doing or how you're carrying yourself. It's that hurt and that feeling of rejection your entire life. And now your own people don't find you attractive, or they don't prefer to be with you. And it's one thing to be black, but it's another thing to be dark black, and have darker skin, because light-skinned girls get a pass, like everybody wants them. But when you're dark, even in the media, that's not appealing. You find so many black girls, little black girls out there using so many filters to look lighter, to look more appealing. And so that's where that comes from.
Okay. My name's Dominique, and just to go off what Yamali was saying, so I was raised by a single mom, and I have two brothers. I have a twin brother and an older brother. And we grew up in an area that was considered like really bad, so my mom never let us play outside. So I didn't really experience like racism or prejudice or stereotypes until middle school or high school. So like Yamali was saying, like my father wasn't in my life. I didn't have a dad growing up, but when I came to Gateway, and even a little before, I had probably like 3 male figures in my life. So the stereotypes that you hear, like black men don't take care of their family or they're not around, I was blessed to know some black men that did love their family. And Pastor Terry, I watched Pastor Terry love his kids and love his wife, and Brother Hardy, love his kids, love his wife, and my pastor that passed away 2 years ago. So I looked up to them, and I knew, like, even though my father didn't want me, or he left my family, like, that's not all black men. Like, there are good black men out there. And like Yamli said, my twin is engaged to a white girl, and my older brother is actually dating a white girl as well. But growing up, like my twin would say, like, I would never date a black girl. And it would hurt me when he said that, because I was like thinking, like, I'm a black girl, like, why would you say you wouldn't date a black girl? So I would watch him date white girls, and I think part of like the problem, like I necessarily didn't love them as much, was just hurt, because I'm like, why is my brother dating like white girls and saying so many negative things about black girls when I'm not like that? Like, I'm not, there's stereotypes, like I'm not sleeping around, like I don't have kids, I go to school, I'm educated, I like fashion, I dress well, so I didn't get like the stereotypes even coming from black men. And so Dom graduated college, he has his master's degree. Then my older brother doesn't have like a master's degree. So they're two like opposite people. And Dom's very like logical, like he likes to think, and my brother likes to fight. So like if something's wrong, like I tend to go to Dom, because Dom's like, all right, let's think about this, Dom, and he like take a step back. And Paul's like, all right, where do they live? So I know like I'm not gonna go to him for certain things. because I just know it's gonna happen. But they're two completely different men, but Dom carries himself very well. Like, he dresses really nice, he has a master's degree, house, a nice car. My brother has like long dreadlocks, like down to his butt, and he dresses differently and he talks different. He also has a nice car too, but when it comes down to it, they both have experience of being pulled over, or just like experiences with police officers. And I just learned that it doesn't matter. Like, Dom is living the American dream, so like it doesn't matter that he has a master's degree and he dresses nice and he carries himself well, and my brother like talks with slang and he has like long dreadlocks. They're both looked at as black males. Like, they're both a threat, or people look at them differently. So it tells me like it doesn't matter. Like, even if you go by what society is saying of how you should act or dress or whatever, like, it doesn't matter, because their skin color is gonna be black no matter what they do. So I've really personally never experienced as much racism. Like, I've been called like I'm pretty for a black girl, from white girls and black girls. Like, black girls that are, I guess, lighter skinned than me, like, would say, you're pretty for a black girl, which I didn't really understand that because we're both black, but I've experienced that. But I think my brothers have experienced it more just because they're males. So, yeah.
And if I could piggyback off something Dominique said, I think African American males tend to have more physical encounters, where I think with us women, it's more like the emotional stuff that we have to hear, like, oh, like, wow, you speak eloquently and professional, like, for being black, or you're beautiful or pretty for being black. And it's like, I don't think people understand what that does to us inside. Like, why can't I just be an intellect just because? You know what I mean? Why is it so out of the ordinary because of the color of my skin? Or you hear my name, because I used to work in a call center and we would get transferred calls from offshore. I want to speak to an American right now. I can't understand what these people are saying. So they would get Yamali, and I have to introduce myself after you got transferred from offshore. And I'll say, hello, my name is Yamali. How can I help you? What's your name? Where are you located? What country are you in? And I don't have an accent. So it's like, what is it really about? You know, when they hear these names or they see the color of your skin and they make an assumption based off that. And I know I married a man who was biracial. He's half black, half white. And when we got pregnant with our first child, the first thing everybody would say to me is, oh my gosh, he's gonna have beautiful skin because he's gonna be light skinned. So what does that say to me as a dark woman? And that was when we were having a son. He's gonna have the most beautiful complexion. And I know people mean well, but when you always felt like dark wasn't appealing and not attractive your entire life, like, sorry. And now we're expecting a little girl, so now it's, oh my gosh, she's gonna have good hair. So my traits aren't appealing. It's only because they're gonna be light skinned, and I don't want people to look at my kids and think, oh my gosh, you're so cute because they're light, or because they're mixed, or they're the perfect blend. They're beautiful because they're mine. And it's just the emotional stuff. So yeah, when we see people like Andrea in the store, you know, it's kind of just like, okay, another one, you know, like. So I just wanted to piggyback kind of off what Dominique said.
And what Yami was saying about like the hair and stuff, like for people, like black girls would say, oh, you have white hair because my hair, like I straighten my hair and my hair's nice, so they're like, you're trying to be white. But when I wet my hair is curly, and I just like my hair straighter because it's just easier to deal with. But they would say, you talk white, you dress white, you're trying to be white, or I like to go swimming. Like, I like to go to the ocean, I actually get in the water. And they're like, you're trying to be white. And I'm like, no, I'm actually just trying to swim. So a lot of people say that, and I'm just being who I am. Like, I don't look at it as being black or white or whatever. That's just what I like. I like straight hair. I like the water. Doesn't.
Yeah, and it's okay. You know, it's sad because it starts off as a joke. And I think it's okay for us to have a little humor and have fun. You know, you didn't mention Asians, but you know the stereotype with Asians, mathematics. So they all have stereotypes. And you know, we make these jokes and references, but when you really begin to play out what it's doing and speaking, you know, I mean, for all my life, I mean, I was told I got good hair. But what does that really say to someone else whose hair is curlier? They got bad hair. You know, or for me, growing up being mixed, I spoke, well, I'm white. I've always been white because I speak too good. And so if I want to be black, I need to speak ghetto. So what that means is the only way to really be identifiable as black among the black community. So now this is going to black people. They gotta raise the bar, because it's like they'll just push their own out. Just push them out. They'll just push their own out, just gone, because they're not black enough. And this is what we call internal racism. It exists within your own people. And there's all kinds of hurt that circulate, and it's dangerous. It's bad enough when black people do it on their own, but then when white people take this on, do you know that they've been doing studies, and they would take a bunch of Barbie dolls, and they would take a 4-year-old little girl, and they would ask the girl to pick up the pretty Barbie doll. And every time the little girls, black and white, the little girls would always pick up the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Barbie doll. The black-skinned Barbie doll was the last one to get picked. Somewhere along the line, these things we're talking about right here has infiltrated our minds. And we've got to start being honest about it. Because here's the reality. When we opened up and Pastor Tyree started talking about prejudices, everyone was silent. He asked a question about, are you prejudiced? And no one would answer. That's the problem. That's the problem, is no one is honest enough to talk about it. We need to start being honest and be like, hey, I'll be the first one to admit it. I didn't see it. I didn't recognize it. But I have preconceived ideas and unconscious biases in my head and heart, and I don't know where they come from. But we've got to fix it. Because if we're Christians and we have unconscious biases, what's that say about the world?
Hello, my name is Miranda. I think Brad gave me the mic because the other night, I actually didn't know where I fall into this panel, because I personally don't have a story where I've been affected by racism, or I didn't know that I had prejudices maybe, or unconscious biases, but I think I'm learning a lot, which we should be, as we're asking each other questions and we're listening to each other's stories. I'm just starting to ask myself, like, me as being raised with 2 parents who never taught us anything that a certain race is better than another. We love everyone. I remember loving a dear lady in our congregation when I was a little girl. Her name was Gloria, and she was just like the family friend, the church friend. We all loved her. And I have very dear friends of mine that are black. My roommate in college, I have so many friends and like they feel like family to me, because I've been raised around just loving and accepting people for who they are. So to me, racism isn't the issue. It's when we start talking about these things like prejudices and unconscious biases. That's where I'm starting to learn that I can fall into this conversation, because I'm learning that me as a white blonde girl, I'm learning that I fall into that. Like, people are, these Barbie dolls that they're saying, it's like the young girls will pick the blonde Barbie, you know, but I'm just noticing, I didn't know that is a thing. I didn't know that people I guess, are taught a certain way. I guess I disconnect in my mind. I'm not very much in touch with politics. I'll be the first to say I kind of disconnect from all of that. You want to ask me about reality stars and TV and celebrity, I'll be the first one. I can tell you. I can relate to that. Talk to me about the Kardashians. Talk to me about, I'll keep up with them, you know? But then the embarrassing thing, and I'm telling you, it brought me to tears in our meeting before. It's embarrassing, but I'm going to say it. Some current events happened that, I guess, was it Bubba Wallace? The race car thing? They were talking about it pre-service, like, hey, there's some events that are happening. I was scared to admit, guys, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't keep up with things. I feel like I disconnect. I'm in this bubble to where I keep up with things that matter to me, but that's the problem. Things that are in the news, that are in the current news should matter to me because it's my brothers, it's my sisters. It's my sister sitting over there that feels like her skin she's not beautiful because of her skin. It's my sister, Andrea, who's going through something because she married a black man. It's Dominique who's getting told, you're beautiful for a black girl. These are things that, and my brothers, when they get pulled over by a cop, I've heard stories. I didn't know it's a thing. You got to do certain things. Put your hands on the wheel. Announce what you're doing. Don't make any move until you announce and tell what you're doing. Do you know that I've never had to even think about that? When I get pulled over, I start crying. And you know what the cop said to me? Rusty's a cop, so I can relate. Like, hopefully you understand. So he pulls me over, and I start crying. You know what the question asked to me before license and registration? Honey, what's the rush? Are you okay? Just sit back, just take a deep breath. You're okay. Just relax. Just get me your license and your registration. And I'm just crying. And, I'm crying because I'm scared, just because I don't want to tell my parents. I don't want to get fined. And I did something wrong. But that's not the case with a lot of black men, especially. And I'm learning this. I'm hearing this. I didn't know it was still a thing. Call it naive, call it ignorant, I'm not sure, or disconnected. I'm not connected to what's going on. And what got my attention was George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. I started seeing it's an issue. I started seeing that there are things going on that I've been so naive to, caught up in my bubble of, what's Khloe Kardashian wearing? Oh, she has a new jean line? That's really cool. Oh, it's too expensive. Or who's wearing what shoes? Or, oh, that music's great. But I'm not connecting with what should be mattering to me is my race, my white race, is putting people down. That's a real thing. I didn't know that this stuff is still going on. But I'm paying attention, and I'm learning to listen, and I'm learning to ask questions because I want to know, and I want to be better, and I want to recognize unconscious biases because that's what they are. Another thing is I could be walking down the street or at the mall, and I'll give you an example because this has happened to me. I'll be by myself somewhere, and I'll be walking down the street, or say someone's coming towards me and they look like a thug. A thug meaning a young black man who might have his pants a little low, might have some tattoos, might be looking at me a certain way, and I'll cross over, even if there's a white young man on the same side, the other side where I'm crossing, I'll feel safer as a young woman. Why? Walking towards that white man, young kid, because I might think, okay, he might catcall, he might, hey girl, what's up? But I feel safer. Why do I feel safer with a white, walking on the same street or side of the aisle with a white man than I do a black man? I don't know, but those are the kind of questions I'm asking myself. I wasn't raised that way. I explained to you, I have best friends that are black. I have friends that feel like family that are black. I'm not racist, but there are definitely prejudices that I have got to acknowledge, and I'm ready to start listening and learning and recognizing them for what they are, because I want to be better, and I don't want to be silent. I don't want to be in a bubble. I don't want to be closed off in my own reality world. I need to know what's going on, and I just encourage all of us to really start digging, because I will tell you, I'm not a racist, But I will tell you that I am recognizing things about myself that are ugly, and I don't know where they come from, but I want to find out and take care of it.
My name is Rusty Herman. I'm a Maryland State Trooper. I got on this committee. I was asked, I think God opened the door for me. I see in my job, I see the meanness, the hatred from both sides. And I really believe the law enforcement in our country has let the American people down, no matter what race. I tell my kids, I mean, this is, for me seeing all the evil out there, my kids have never seen that. I put my kids in a bubble. And my daughter, or daughters, were raised here in this church. And every positive man they had, a black man in their lives, they loved them. They don't even know what prejudice is. They're looking at all this mess out here and saying, Dad, I don't understand it. If we look at ourselves in the mirror, we all understand it a little bit. Me as a Christian man, if we don't, the church don't stand up here and try to fix this problem by talking out these issues, it's not going to be fixed. I mean, I see a civil war coming.
Amen.
I don't care what color you are in my little world, you're a friend until you prove me otherwise. I treat everybody the same. If you know me, I'm out on the street, and I'm here in this church, I'm home in my living room, I treat everybody the same. And I want to be transparent, I want to be real. And that's, a lot of policemen out here, they don't like people anymore. They're so fed up with the anger and running from call to call. I say this, but nobody calls us for supper. We don't have time to go post-policing to try to help the communities anymore. We're so stretched thin. We run from evil to evil to evil to evil. And the time we catch our breath, we're going home and taking this garbage home. I won't allow it in my house. I just want to be a godly man. I mean, when you bury me, don't bury me in my police outfit. Bury me in my blue jeans and my flannel shirt. And everybody I get in contact with, I want you to feel like you're part of my family. And I hope that you do. And Pastor asked me about the incident that happened where the gentleman got shot in the back. That was wrong. And no police department can ever tell you it was right. I don't know the laws in that state, but I know the laws in Maryland, and they weren't even close to being justifiable. I heard different things about the taser law they had down there, but the media couldn't tell the truth to save their own lives. If we rely on the media for all our information, we're already in trouble. God's word is what we need to be in, and we need to grow as a family. And when I text my Bible study group, I'm telling them, family, you're my family. My softball team, you're my family. The church is my family. And I just want to be more like Christ each and every day. But I didn't know, after talking to listening to the stories, my heart was broken. Pastor Tyree, my kids love him to death. And for him to navigate through a white man's world just broke my heart. We can't say we don't understand it, but we put it on a side of our lives that we don't want to hear it. We don't want to be part of it, you know. And when I heard Brad's testimony, the little bit I met him, my heart was broken. If we don't get broken for our brothers and sisters out here and stand up, who's going to do it? I mean, this committee has brought us together to unify us, hopefully as a church for Jesus Christ, and get out here. If I see something wrong, say something. I mean, don't let it. The bad policemen out here, I don't know any. And I don't know the inner city's workings. I've been a highway patrolman. And a couple of these things that people has brought to my attention, it just grieves me bad. I want you all to feel that as a white man, we are privileged. And I never realized it until I heard how they wasn't privileged. I think I'm living my life to the fullest of my extent, and my buddies, we all make little comments, the buts. They always want to sidetrack the main issue. If Black Lives Matter. And the reason Black Lives Matter so much is that it brought the attention of the anger these young people have. God help us. I hope we can unite and see each other as people, not colors. You know, to me, it's a right and wrong issue. It's not a black and white issue. But unfortunately, that's where we're at. And I hope that if you have any questions for me, I hope that we can talk one-on-one and I can answer your questions. I just want to be a godly man, period. I hope my kids and my grandkids can feel racism is not an issue in our house. And I mean, anybody's welcome at my house. This is a story I haven't told anybody yet, but I don't know if you heard of the Buffalo Soldiers, Delaware motorcycle gang. As a patrolman, I was up at the gas station in Clear Spring, and they rolled in about 6 thick. They had their follow cars, their ladies in their cars, and they all had their colors on. In Maryland, you're not allowed to wear your colors. It's against the law. They had their colors on. One guy needed air in the tire of his motorcycle. They refused him air unless they paid money to turn the air on because it was a Sunday. Well then, I don't know, I call him the leader, Mr. Gillis. He's a real big, tall, black guy. And he walked in and it was a wrong issue. He's like, you're only not waiting on me because I'm black. Well, my ministry is to find a need and fill it. Pastor tried to steal that a couple weeks ago, but I got this. I looked at Mr. Gillis, I had to look up at him and said, sir, I live 3 miles down the road. I have 2 80-pound air tanks in my house. I said, you're welcome to come there and help fix your tire. He said, you want me to come to your house? I said, it's not my house, it's God's house. I rolled in with the motorcycle guys, 6 motorcycles, 1 follow car with the ladies in it and all their baggage. And my wife like to had a heart attack. But she says, Russ, I know your heart. I'm in full uniform rolling around the ground trying to fix this guy's motorcycle. And we couldn't fix it. So we put it on the trailer, put all the luggage in the back of their little Honda Ridgeline. And this big, tall black guy had to get smashed in this car with 4 women in it already. And I'm gonna put faith on one of my daughters. She jumped up on a little step for the lady's car, and she says, wow, you're black. And I'm like, ma'am, I'm so sorry. She said, no, they'd never seen a black lady before. She goes, yeah, I'm black. And they gave my kids water and snacks, and here they're traveling back to Delaware. And about 3 weeks later, I get an honorary membership for the Buffalo Soldiers. I got the plaque. I can prove it to you. And my boss is like, I'm not even asking. I said, Lieutenant, I'm just showing love. I'm just trying to love these people. I want to love them. I want to love everybody. If you know me, that's my heart. So.
Wow. Great story.
Buffalo Soldiers.
Thank you. Brother Brad, you want it? Or somebody feel led to go next?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So hang with me as I started to tell my story. I guess it was 3 weeks ago, I told it at a different location, and I realized when I told it that I haven't spoke about it in a long time, so it's kind of an emotional thing for me. So I need you to just ride with me for a little bit because I want to be clear and concise as I speak to you tonight about what happened to me, and sometimes it's hard to get to it, much less through it. Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. I remember when I first heard those lyrics, it was the most absolute truth that I'd ever heard. But then when I turn on the TV, they're saying it's hate speech. It's hate speech. It's hate speech. But when the woman that was at Rite Aid that called 911, that got the police sent to the Rite Aid where my cousin was when they shot him 18 times, made it a joke to me. And a lot of you don't know that part of me, because when I landed here 15 years ago, I landed here saved, with a passion for the things of Christ. August of 1995, at the end of the summer, my cousin was murdered by the police. He was shot 18 times. And I'm telling it backwards because I can't tell it forward, because if I tell it forward, all the emotions come back. He was my brother, my cousin, because from day one, we grew up together from Pampers. He was always a part of my life. I lived in Southwest Virginia, Roanoke, Blacksburg, down in the Appalachian Mountains in the Inkwell, on a piece of property, and we were all family. And there were 20 of us at my age. And there was Maurice. Every day of my life, there was Maurice. And there I was, and we spent the night at each other's houses, and at JoJo's house, and at Bill Boy's house, and Kenny's house, and at Bird Dog's house. We were one. Maurice left. He left town, and he came back at the end of that summer to see us. And he had just announced to us that he was going to see his son. And we're like, "You got a son?" "Yeah, I'm going to see my son." He left to go see his son, and he was supposed to come back. We were going to get together, and we were going to talk about his son, and I was going to find out who his son was. Maurice didn't make it back. He didn't make it back. Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. And I can remember them telling me that Maurice had got shot, and I can remember running to his house to see his mom, Kathy, because I wanted to tell her, but she had already heard, of course. And when I walked in the door, she was stooped over, bent over in the kitchen, and she was just screaming, "They killed my boy. They killed my boy. They killed my boy." Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. I can remember running home because I was going to go get Granddaddy's gun, because I was going to go get dogs to kill my boy. My aunt kept blocking the door. She wouldn't let me out the house. She would meet me at every door. I would push up against her. I was trying to get out the door. I'm like, "Move, you gotta move. Just move." She was just pushing me back, and I don't know what all she was saying to me. But there for a moment, I guess I came to my senses long enough to hear her say, "What's wrong with you?" And I don't know how long it took me to respond to her saying that to me, but eventually I remember saying to her, "I don't know. I don't know what's wrong." I was full of pain. I was full of hurt. I was devastated. Langston Hughes writes a poem, "What happens to dreams deferred?" Look it up. Six months ago, I'm on social media, and I think about Maurice often. You can ask my daughters, they practically know him, and they never met him because he was just that much a part of our lives. Everybody looks like him. I look for his face amongst our black kids all the time. I almost take exception to when you say you found a good one. Because all black men are good. You can't tell me different. Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in your town. This is not a game. This is life and death. 6 months ago on Facebook, I'm scrolling through social media and I'll come upon a picture and it looks just like Maurice. Just like spitting image. And I'm like, Maurice Allen Taylor. I freeze. Because I go back 25 years in time and the conversation is playing in my head. Maurice had a son. I stare at the picture for 20, 30 minutes, I don't know. I'm just staring at this picture of this young man that graduated from Virginia Tech, 15 minutes from my home, that I didn't know. And I've got the clicker right over friend request. Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Get up, get down. 911 is a joke in my town. I finally have the nerve to push click. Within minutes, he accepts. And in my mind, all these feelings of relief and joy, I'm going to get to know him. I'm going to get to know him. So I go to write him a letter, and I can't because there's so much guilt inside of me because I should have done more to save his life. The good one. The good black man. How dare you? To this day, I haven't written him. But I've talked to all my homeboys about him. I've talked to my mama about him. I've talked to his aunt. And they've all said, maybe he's waiting to hear from you. I don't want to put this trauma on that little boy, on that young man. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? Every time I hear but, something's more important than what?
Thank you. Just to piggyback, he said, and all the emotion you had, you're hurt, you're angry, you're young, you don't know how to process all these emotions. And your auntie says, what's wrong with you? And in that moment, as you called the Holy Spirit, what was the words you used to call in the Holy Spirit earlier, last week, the adjective to describe the Holy Spirit? The restrainer. The restrainer. Thank God you had the restrainer.
Absolutely.
And you had the auntie. And through the auntie speaking and the restrainer bringing you down off that emotional pinnacle, you was able to process. But it was like you're so angry over years of experience of your own hurt. And then this happens. And you're about to do something that you would regret, that you know is wrong, that you knew you shouldn't have done. but because you would not have had the restrainer, the Holy Spirit, because you didn't have an auntie to stop you, you did something stupid. And you know, I think about how many people are in our world and that how relatable that is. We've got hurt people in our world. They're broken with no restrainer and no auntie.
Yes.
And we wonder why people are responding the way they are.
Yes. So Tyree sends me a message the night Ahmaud Arbery was killed. And he says to me, "How you doing? What's up? You good?" I say to him, "I don't know how I feel right now because I don't want to touch that trigger." I say to him, "I ain't watch it. I can't watch it. I didn't watch Trayvon's. I can't watch that stuff. Numb to it." Then people ask me often, "Pastor, why do you go so hard?" Because if it wasn't for God's grace, that's the passion that you see why I do what I do. Because it's real. If it wasn't for God's grace, I'd probably be dead. If I didn't turn that passion and energy towards Christ, that's why I worship like I worship. That's why I yell like I yell. That's why I run like I run. I'm not crazy. I've turned all that towards Christ. Whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are of sound mind, think on these things. And this peace of God which passes your understanding. Yeah. But when Ahmaud Arbery shows up, how easy is it to think on something good? When George Floyd has a knee on his neck, it's not easy to think on whatsoever is pure. That's evil. What's wrong with me?
Thank you. Who would like to go?
Can I say something real
Yes, and then Steve or Dave, I'm thinking would be
quick? I just
awesome.
want to say, Brad, I am so sorry. Here I am, a white woman that is married to a black man. And I just realized when you were saying the good one, I got a good one. I took my husband aside this week and I told him how grateful I was and how thankful I was for him and his leadership in our family and how he leads our family and how amazing of a husband and father he is. And I just realized when you were saying that, over the years I have caught myself breathing a sigh of relief, not understanding why, but it just hit me. Me, a white woman married to a black man, a champion for the black people. I have prejudged. I got a good one. When you just said that all black men are good, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry.
And I appreciate you saying that, but it goes to show how systemic racism is. And we want to whitewash it. Ooh. Whitewash it. So that's why these conversations become so important. It's not about a guilt trip. I don't need you to feel guilty. I carry enough of that weight on my own shoulders. That's the cross I bear. So I don't need you to feel guilty about any of this stuff. I just need you to face it and acknowledge it. And then we'll talk about it and we'll grow. Go ahead.
Yeah, I work with enough young people and parents of young people to know that for someone to say you got a good one and a black man, I work with enough white parents that had their white daughter's boyfriend walk out on them to know it happens to all races. So to say, oh, you got a good one, that we can look back and we can say, oh, you didn't get the school shooter. You didn't get, because when I look at, when it's so systemic that if you have Harold Mail on the Facebook thing, you watch the face that pops up and watch how many comments are per face, right? And so when I see these things and I see this, And then I look at the culture, and I hear like the thing about like Ahmaud Arbery, right? I was thinking, I asked my wife, I said, honey, when we were looking for a house, we walked into a house that was like nobody lived in, right? And she said, yeah, me, you, and my dad. We literally knocked on the door, nobody was there. We walked around, we saw the doorknob was and we walked on in. And I remember, I was like, that's right. And I remember saying, not me. And Tom was like, no, come on. I was like, yeah. And I went in, and we had the flashlight on. We were looking, it smells like cat pee. And I remember literally walking in that house to know, like, people walk in those houses. It wasn't right. It wasn't right. It wasn't right to go in there, but people do it, right? But people do it. And then I hear yeah, but he shouldn't have. Yeah, but well, like it would have been justifiable for me, Tom, and Glory to walk out of a house and people follow us down the road and shoot me, Pastor Tyree. But that been justifiable. So don't give me a yeah, but. Well, what about black on black crime? What about black on black crime? Black on black crime gets justice. If a black man kills another black man, he's going to end up in jail once they find out where he lives. That's what about black on black crime. And generally speaking, it's going to get a longer jail sentence than his white counterpart. That's what about black on black crime. And I would never respond back to you on what about the school shooter that's always white? What about the child predator that's always white? What about the guy you find having child porn? I would never come back to the white community with that. Wow. And that's how insensitive it sounds. And then I hear Dominique and Yamali talk, hey, oh, you're pretty for black. When I have white counterparts sending me videos of Candace Owens saying, listen, she's so elegant. She's so pretty. You know what I hear? Because they don't send me the white lady saying the same thing, saying, oh, she's pretty, and she's so elegant. Just listen, just take time to listen. You know what I hear? I hear the systemic racism in it. Because she's one of the good ones. It's probably the only black friend that racist has. It's just, and it's there, and we got to deal with it. We got to deal, and I hope you're hearing me well. Hope you're hearing the love and the passion in it. But this is what we hear. I know what you're trying to say, but this is what is being articulated as, and that's what it sounds like. The yeah buts. The yeah buts.
Real quick, so you said black on black crime. I did some research last week. It's like 82% of blacks kill blacks. And I was like, wonder what whites is. No, and it's like 85%. They're both real high. It's like 82% for the whites and 85% for the blacks. And I was like, so hold on. Black people kill black people and white people kill white people. And it's like, duh, common sense. White people hang out with white people, so who's white people gonna kill? White people. Black people hang out with black people, so guess who black people's gonna kill? Black people. It would be more of an issue if black people were killing white people, to me. Like to me, it'd be more an argument if the blacks were killing all the whites. But or white, right? So I'm saying this to say we need to like really think about this, because black on black crime is just as high as white on white crime. And use common sense. It would be like saying, what's American crime on Americans? Well, duh, it's gonna be high, because it ain't gonna be on other races or other cultures. So there's no substance to it. We don't talk about look, guys, I'm sorry, white people shoot up buildings, not black people. Like look at it, like statistically, it's always a white kid that shoots up the building. It's usually white pedophiles. But we don't talk about that. They don't get a label.
What they do get is, oh, there was trauma. and there's mental illness. And every time a school is shot up, guess what the narrative is? Now we got to check mental health and guns. It's always an argument, right? And then we say, why you want to politicize everything? Right? Why you want to make it a political agenda? But when a black guy shoots up something, it's a thug. Look at him, destroying stuff. Look at him. You gonna tell me there's no mental health issues in the black community? Gonna tell me there's no trauma in the black community? And it's the systemic, it's the systemic racism of the whole thing. The black community, majority speaking, because majority of black communities are redlined, underfunded, schools are underfunded, over-policed, right? Underfunded, over-policed. And so what begins to happen is, because it's underfunded, over-policed, there a lot of trauma goes through, and it's not medically documented. They're called thugs. They're called thugs. While their white counterparts are saying they have mental illness. Teenager, and you could literally win a hockey game and burn down a city, and you're called wild fans. And you won the game, and you still burned down the city, and you trashed the police car, and you set the thing on fire, and you knocked down the light poles, and yeah, Philly, they won. And your black counterparts are saying, that's the systemic racism part of it.
And yo,
but you
bro,
know what? We gotta stay quiet. Because we can't do the yeah, but.
That's right. Yo, bro, and I was gonna say, not only do we gotta stay quiet, we understand God's grace. That's why we don't speak on those things. It's not that we're not aware. It's not that I'm not aware that those things are happening. I get God's grace. So I'm not attacking you. Look at those white people. They're acting crazy. Because that's ignorant to me. Why would I do that? We're all a human. We're all the human race. So I don't make those comments. We don't make those comments, because what hurts you hurts us. We're standing down and saying these things to you because enough is enough. It's even in your white privilege that you feel like it's okay to say those things, and we're just showing you grace because we see them. We look at each other. Every time these young women say that, when I first saw her, when she said that, it breaks my heart because of my daughters, and I know the story. So my intent, my will is to protect her from everything and everybody, because I know what she has to go through. I'll die for her. You may not understand it. I don't have to know her. I know her story.
When Tyree was saying, like, people bring up black on black crime, like how insensitive it is, like with the All Lives Matter, because I've been sharing my heart on that too. How we're not saying like everyone's lives doesn't matter. We're addressing black people. So black people are the ones getting targeted. They're getting murdered. And we're just asking people to acknowledge that. So when you say all lives matter, it hurts me so bad when people say that, because I know that all lives matter, but they don't. Like, that's the point, that they don't matter. They don't all matter right now. So
It's
when
the
you
yeah, but.
Right.
It's a yeah, but. It's a yeah, but again.
And
yeah, but.
And
It
to
does
me,
matter. Help us with our community then. Since policies a lot of times fall in your hands.
Can I talk? Today at my job, so I'm a preschool teacher, and at my school, my boss made Black Lives Matter shirts for her and her kids and our kids at our school. So they passed it out, and we all took pictures, and she told me, like, I don't understand what you're going through, but I stand with you. Like, she's not telling me that all lives matter. She's saying, I see you and I hear you and I stand with you. And that's all we're asking for. So I hate when people say that. If you just pause and think, we're not trying to dismiss any other kind of race or whatever. We're just saying our lives matter too, because right now we're hurting. That's all we're saying.
Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Thank these guys. Thank our Pastor Ray for just being bold enough to have a conversation like this. We appreciate it. It's needed in the community. A lot of people want to say, why is the church talking about this stuff? They should just talk about good stuff. This is what the church needs to talk about because this is hurting our communities. And you're seeing the pain. This is the church that is experiencing this pain. This isn't the world. So if the church is feeling it, how much more is the world feeling it? And they need the church. So we got to get on the same page before we can reach the lost. So how does a 43-year-old white car salesman get in a race experience panel? It's kind of different, right? So I just want to share just how God will open up doors. I assure you I am the least qualified to talk to anybody about race on this panel. And I say that because I want to encourage you today, if you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. There's all kinds of stuff that's going out in social media and the news, the media, and it gets your mind twisted in different ways. And if you don't stay grounded in the Word and on His truth and His love, we're just going to get caught up in it. So I got really broken about 3 weeks ago, and I've never considered myself racist, but I talked to my wife and my family. I'm like, just something's not right with this. I watched the George Floyd video, and this was different for me this time because it wasn't that seed of doubt that we want to cast that, what these guys are sharing, but this guy was maybe doing this, or but he shouldn't have been in this situation, but we got the but, and then we got a knee for 8 minutes. And to me, it was an eye-opening event for America to see there's no but. There's no but here. There was not anybody on this side or this side. It was all together saying that this is wrong, but it can't stop there. So my wife and I, we decided the best way, we didn't want to use Facebook as a platform. We didn't want to just put some catchy hashtag followed up by no action. So we said, you know what we want to do? We want to understand it better. And here's the action. We reached out to passionate black people, and we wanted to hear their hearts. And you know how good God is? Most of the passionate black people that we reached out to before I even knew this panel was being kind of put together, it was most of the people on this stage. And then Brad just shared his heart. I watched him over at another event 2 weeks ago, and just the pieces start coming together. But if you never reach out to have the conversations, if you never reach out to hear this, how can you ever go back into your community and knock down? Maybe you're not racist, but right now, not being racist is not enough. It's just not enough anymore. We have to go deeper to that. And we don't need to go on Facebook and apologize that God created us to be white. That's not what these guys want to hear. And people don't know what to say, so they're like, I apologize that I was created. God doesn't make mistakes. He created me white. He created this panel black and white and mixed, and He doesn't make mistakes. So that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear you listen. And what Dominique just shared, they just don't want the but or all lives matter or just some kind of just defense. And it's almost like the white people that I'm talking to, it's almost like this defense that we got to justify that we're not racist. Like we got to make this case that I don't need to say anything or get involved because I know I'm not racist. And then it stops. It's more than that now, guys. Like we're past that stage. We're in the first part of this where we're listening. We're hearing the hearts of people. We're taking all of our preconceived notions. We're taking all of what we might have been brought up in, what we might have heard, what our white friends are saying, what we hear from the black community. This isn't a divide. It's time for the church to get united. Christ went to the cross, and the hate and the racism, it is sin. He died for that to end. But we have to know that until he comes back, the church still hurts and still feels the pain. And we got to be empathetic to that. And we got to be a listening ear so that we can take it back to our circles and our community and our people. That's where the true healing is going to take place. Because we can come to an event like this, we can say, you know, I support you on Facebook. But if that's where it ends, our family has invested in the last 3 weeks a significant amount of time. And we've been intentional about it. Like 30, 40 hours of just listening. And I'm not saying that, hey, look at me, I'm the white guy, look at what I'm doing. If you'd see me on Facebook, because I'm not on Facebook, you say, well, he must be silent. He's not doing anything about this. So be careful, too, what you're speaking about people, because you don't know what they might be doing behind the scenes that's bringing this thing together. Give people grace. Extend it to them, whether they're black, whether they're white. Extend that grace and know, I'm thinking of this thing like reaching people for the gospel. If I'm white or I'm black and I know that I'm going to say something that, I'm not saying stand up for what's right or wrong, but if I know that I'm going to say something that's going to ignite something and it's going to cause more division, just be cautious on what you're saying. Not that you got to walk around in fear, but you know, I'm not going on Facebook either, and I'm not having a conversation in a group of people, just fire and brimstone, every sin is so horrible, it's bad, everybody's going to hell. There's a kindness and a gentleness and an open door that God will allow to be open for you. That's how a 43-year-old white car salesman gets on a panel like this, because I just said, hey, God, make us available. That's all I'm challenging you guys, wherever you're at with it. If you've been silent, you've been quiet, you don't know what to say. These are hurting brothers and sisters. We can say it's not happening because it's not happening in my perfect little world, in my perfect little white neighborhood with my one black neighbor, and I know where they live. Like, seriously though, like, think about that for a minute. Like, we don't experience it, so we think it doesn't exist. And until you start having these conversations, you start listening to the fact that it does exist and it's real, that's when real healing can take place. But in my original sales training, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And we got to get back to listening. That's all I got.
Thank you, Brother Dave. So can I counter to you? Is that all right, Brother Jay? I just think it's appropriate at this moment because you've been at Gateway how long? I'm guessing 20 years. 21, 22 years.
Yes, sir.
And you said something on Sunday morning in our pre-service meeting. And essentially what I heard you say is the pain and the struggle is not new. It's just that you have just felt comfortable to talk about it with your white brothers and sisters. And that really hit me, because what that means is that you have been worshiping for 22 years and living your entire life fitting in, but never feeling the liberty to share the struggle. And quite frankly, most people didn't even know that they were there. They thought you were that one good one that didn't have any of the experiences that people really talk about. So it really hit me, and I just felt like it's a good time to transition to you.
All right, thank you, Pastor. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jay. I want to talk about some pain that I experienced over my life. I grew up in Washington, D.C., back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Everything in D.C. was black, okay? Schools were black, teachers were black, mailmen were black, the mayor was black, bums were black, thieves were black. So I grew up kind of opposite of Pastor Tyree, navigating and having to navigate through a white dominated areas. I grew up black, and everything was black, and that's why they called it Chocolate City. And then I got the experience to go into the military, and at that time I understood that everything wasn't black, but I didn't know it. It wasn't colorblind. I just never saw that part of the world. So I went to the military, had some great experiences with all races, and had this feeling like we all were equal. At that time, the military didn't have any separation issues. We all were green, okay, in the Army. So I didn't experience anything like that. Fast forward a couple years, I come to Hagerstown, and I really realized that, wow, there is a difference when you talk about black and white and the integration of black and white. And I saw it firsthand. Pastor was saying that I had a problem not revealing how I felt, being 3 times better than my counterpart just to be equal. Okay? Understand that. And I learned very fast, like Pastor Tyree did, that I had to be 3 times better than David just to be called his equal, and suppress that my whole life. Not be able to tell David, my friend, how I feel really about the trauma of waking up every morning with my happy face, going out and proving to the world that they really don't understand black people, and doing everything I possibly can to change your mind one person at a time. And I'm telling you right now, it is daunting and it is stressful. And now we're finally coming to a point where we're getting relief from it because we're having those conversations. This is an amazing time in our country. I have been able to speak black, white, purple, yellow friends and tell them my heart and not be afraid to do so. I, like Pastor said, have had a mask on for 30 years working for an organization, a law enforcement organization close to here, and happen to be 3 times better than my counterparts coming up through the ranks. 3 times. My uniform had to look 3 times better. My shoes had to look 3 times better. My attitude had to be 3 times better. My test scores had to be 3 times better to be in the arena with my white counterpart. Why? Why? Grown man, 57 years old. And I'm having these relief conversations now. Relief. Thank you, Jesus. Relief. That we can talk about it. Finally, talk about it. And not only just talk about it, listen and be heard. You don't know what it's like living not being heard. And you say, why is this country in a place? Because good people, black, white, and purple, have been impoverished because they haven't been heard. They haven't had, I always said myself, that I would work myself into a position to have a seat at the table because the decision makers sit at the table. But why do I have to be 3 times better to sit at the table? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So when he said 3 times better, I want to give you an example. I took a group of kids in St. Louis, group of black boys, all boys, and they those did you, Tyree? No, for real? All right, we'll talk later. He's like, nah, that's another wound right there. And I said, hey guys, let's go and start breaking the stereotypes. And I put unrealistic pressure on the boys because they can't prank like everybody else can prank for the entire week. But it wasn't treated the same. And we had to have hard conversations on the way home because unfortunately, there's already a prejudice, a stereotype. And it's not fair, but I'm telling these boys when we go to the camp, you got to be on your A game because we're trying to break the stereotype. And we're getting ready to go in the store, and I give them another coaching. I say, hey guys, we're going on here. Let's show them that everything they see on TV about what black men are is not true for you all. I got to coach a dozen black teenagers before we go into the store how to act. Don't laugh. Don't act the stereotype. You got to be small, as Tyree said. And that's what Jay is saying is he always went in knowing that he had to be on top his game, giving his best, because there's already a stereotype, and one failed expectation proves the stereotype right. So you've got to always be on your A game because one time says, I knew it was right. And what happens with that is we all do this. We get people close to us that look like us, that has common sense. It's just, it is what it is. You're not going to hang out with somebody that's a gamer and you're a sports guy, right? You're going to get people around you that are like you. And we're talking about a white dominated world. Let me be real clear with you. There's more white leaders in our country than any other leadership, period. And there are more male leaders, actual. And a lot of black people say, well, it's racism. It's probably not. Okay, maybe some of it is, maybe some of it isn't. But here's the reality of how the system continues. A white man is in power, CEO, president, vice president, branch manager, director of 100 people, and there's somebody that he's about to put in his place. Well, likely white, likes golf, and he's a golfer. They both golf. They watch certain things together. It's not racist, and he may not be prejudiced. It's just the fact that we put people around a circle that wouldn't usually be in your circle. Right? So you like, how do we break the system? It's by being intentional about addressing unconscious biases that we have and putting different people in our circles. Does that make sense? So saying I'm not racist isn't enough. Saying I got black friends isn't enough. Saying that I believe in women. We have to start getting at the root of it and changing the system, the process. So I really just wanted to clarify, because it's probably quite offensive to hear someone say, I got to work 3 times as hard. Black people don't want to be in a position to meet a quota. They need minorities. That doesn't feel good. That feels like they suck, but they had to get it. We're just saying, just see us. That's it. You know, I think in the next month or so, we need to have another one. We need to talk about things like why people say things like colorblind's offensive, white privilege. There's a lot of words that are thrown around that the media hijacks and makes it very offensive. And we just need to talk about it. And I want to get some white people who are real passionate about why it's wrong up here next time. As long as you got grace and you got love, and we're going to have a debate. We're going to talk about stuff like this. We need to just talk about it. Right? 3 people was like, yeah. Everybody else was like, I don't know. So we just need to have hard conversations. So we are going to Steve. No.
No pressure or anything. Thanks, Pastor.
I'll help you. This is Lauren. She was stuck in traffic on 81. That's why she couldn't get here.
So I do feel out of place up here because when we had our meeting last week and everybody goes around the table and everybody's talking about I came from a good, loving home. If I walked in here who I was 25 years ago, y'all would not want to hug me. And I was a bad person. I call it a feral child. I did not go home. I just ran. I didn't live in a very good neighborhood. And when we had parties back then, they lasted for days because I hung out with other kids like me that did not have role models, so we could get away with it. But it got to the time where I needed to get back home because my mom, after a couple of days, would file a report. And we had been partying for a couple of days, and I was not in my right mind. And were willing to help me out to get me home safe. There was one person who stood up and was like, I'll walk you home. Didn't know him. Where we were at to where I lived, it was about a 40-minute walk, and it was probably around midnight. He could have stopped at the park after I got in my house safe. And he was a perfect gentleman the whole time. So a couple weeks, hi, sorry. Right here? Okay, good. Had not thought about him in 25 years. You have to remember the only thing that I knew of this person was that he had been nice to me. When people who were my friends that I was supposed to be able to trust did not care. And my knee-jerk reaction, he ended up dying from cancer. And I was so disgusted with myself that the only thing I knew about him was that he had been kind to me, and I still went there. And I'm not one of these people who grew up in a bubble and I still went there. And I'm embarrassed to admit it. I'm disgusted that I have that in me. And I keep going back to thinking about family. To me, church is family. I'm not close with my family. My family has called me white trash my whole life. When I got baptized, I cried because nobody from my family was here. Nobody showed up. And a friend of mine, who is one of the reasons why we started coming here, said, "You have a new family now." Everybody up here is my family, and they're hurting, every last one of them. And when you're a family, when you're a good family, you hurt together and you heal together. Be part of the solution and start listening to everybody's stories. Do I do okay?
You did.
I've been around a while. I've been away for a while, but I was raised in an affluent home. I went to private school with my brother. Both my kids are going to private school. I enjoy a good debate. I'm that guy that's asking questions. When I watched the George Floyd murder, because it was, I was the guy asking, give me the details. I wanted to know, I was the yeah but guy, and I'm ashamed to admit that, but that's my first jump. My first jump is to find out, to defend. rather than come alongside and empathize. That's not okay. We've heard a lot, prejudice, racism, and I think someone mentioned it, but I'm gonna say it again, ignorance. Ignorance has been my life. I always had black friends. I was always taught to love everyone. You know, I was raised in a Christian home, so I knew I got it. I knew the pictures of Jesus that were white. Well, no, he's really black. I knew all that, or at least dark. Yeah, whatever. But, you know, last week when Tyree told his story about having a burden, even as a youth pastor here, I was here in this church when he was brought on as youth pastor. And I didn't have a clue that he had a burden. And I looked at him and I said, geez, I'm sorry if I added to your burden. But I didn't know a lot. You can call it a bubble, but it's you know, people saying now, you got to have the right question. We got to stand up and not be silent. That sounds good. And the first time I heard that, it was like, well, okay, what do I say? How am I supposed to, when Tyree was first hired, I didn't know he had a burden. Why would I say something if I didn't know there was a thing there to talk about? Now I know. It took a while for me to learn about Tyree's burden. And that's probably where my heart breaks the most, is that I've walked alongside a lot of people and I didn't really know their story. And that breaks me because I call it ignorance, you can call it a bubble, but the truth is I probably just didn't want to see. I probably didn't want to walk up to Tyree and say, hey, does it suck being a black dude in a white man's world? Because I didn't really want the answer because I'm a white man in a white man's world and you know what, it's comfortable. So why would I want to rock the boat? I asked a not white friend of mine today what the opposite of racism was. We talked on the phone, we were chatting, his name's Eddie, he's a good friend of mine from Massachusetts. And I said, Eddie, talk to me. Tell me what the opposite of race. He said, I'll tell you what it is. He said, Steve, because I told him about this panel, and he said, Steve, we just had a panel discussion like that at my church. It wasn't public, it was behind closed doors, and I was in there. They asked me to come in. And he said, Steve, one of the white elders was texting me in the meeting saying, hey, I love you, I appreciate you, I want to hang out, I want to hear your story. Steve, he's never done that before. He's only doing that now. And yeah, that's good. It's good that he's doing it now, but he's never done it before. He said the opposite of racism is doing it before. And he complimented me because Eddie and I had a relationship and a rapport. He looked at me and he said, Steve, you've done that before. You walked with, and I did. I knew his story. I've talked to him, but he's rare in my world. So I do want to offer that up. The opposite of racism is relationship. And I learned that today. And it broke my heart because I haven't done that enough. And I'm going to ask your forgiveness. And I'm going to ask for your grace because I'm the kind of guy that asks the wrong question the wrong way, but my motive is pure. I'm the guy that Pastor Ray talked about before, that my motive is good, but the words don't come out quite right, so I sound like a jerk. So I'm asking for grace when you have tough conversations, especially if you're not white, and a white person comes up to you like me and wants to have a conversation with you. I'm asking for patience, for grace, for gentleness and kindness. Because honestly, I'm not going to get that first question right. But my heart is to love you, and I want to know you because I want the opposite of racism.
I want to, see, that's powerful. I want to kind of ease the pressure. I'm not a fan of the term white guilt. So I don't know if anyone's looking at Steve like, oh, they got him. As a believer, if you're a believer, one of the first things I believe like comes into your life is access to the fruit of the Spirit. The media would have you as a white person. Now look at the fruit of the Spirit, and I call it white guilt, because now you have some compassion and some long suffering. And I would say, see, look at that. The Bible calls it compassion. It said that Jesus would sit up on the hill, look down at the people with compassion, because he was moved, because they looked like sheep without a shepherd, going to and fro. White guilt, I believe, is a perverted thing from the enemy. That is a phrase that would cause somebody to have access to resources of time, talent, and treasure and feel compassion, and now the media says, don't do it, because it's guilt now. It's guilt. It's guilt. When all the while you were doing it before you heard the term white guilt, it was called compassion and giving. And you know what? There probably are some black people that want white guilt, and they're wrong. And they're wrong. They're dead wrong. But it's compassion, and it's a fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, temperance, and meekness. The fruits of the Spirit. And in this whole realm, I've had many conversations. I'm sure we all have had. And the common phrase I hear is, what can I do? Like, what can I do? And my response is, it's more than a hashtag. It's more than putting your Instagram block black, circle black. What I feel like you could do for the black community or black people, however you want to phrase it, is to not necessarily post big on social media, but to have those small conversations in your circle. That's it. And you know what? You might not be invited back to the family reunion. And they might not come back over for Christmas. And they might not ask you to go golfing again. You might not get to go shopping. But at least they know when they're in your presence, the sin of racism don't fly. And if we can speak out about abortion, and we have an exit plan for COVID-19, and we know how to separate, and we know how to come back in, and we know how to get everybody seated, and we know all this stuff, and that just happened in the middle of March, and we still don't have a response for racism. We don't know how to address racism, but we know how to address COVID-19. That's just months old. We got a problem. We got a problem. And so I think first is just identifying the problem, understanding that there is a problem. And I don't want you putting it out. Just change the circle. Change the narrative of your circle. Many of y'all are vocal, because I see y'all, I've snoozed many of y'all for 30 days on Facebook. Because it hurts. It hurts to worship beside many of y'all and see the ugliness that's come out of somewhere. It hurts. I prayed with many of you kids. Prayed with many of you at an altar. And you dismiss it because your circle will find it offensive if you spoke well of people that look like me. I would never judge a whole culture by the worst of its kind. I would never judge a whole police system by one bad cop. I would never judge one young white male that shoots up a school and judge all white young males the same way. And I ask you, don't judge my whole culture because you've seen a couple rioters. Don't judge my whole culture because you've seen a couple looters. Don't judge a whole culture by the least of its kind. because you have the heart of Christ.
Thank you. We've had a good night tonight. Have y'all enjoyed this? Thank you all, everyone on the panel. We're gonna sing, close in a worship song as they come up and get ready to close us out. Oh no. He said, I thought she was gonna let me sing. Y'all wanna stay up or you wanna go down and let them, what y'all wanna do? We'll go down, let's go down. All right, we'll go down, we'll head on down. So can y'all give them a round of applause for sharing their stories? Thank you. Y'all want to come? Whatever y'all want to do. It's been wonderful. Thank y'all so much. We're going to just worship together, guys. Look, the song we're going to sing tonight is a song that really echoes the heart of what we've been talking about. And I would like you to stand up all over this place and worship with us as we close out this evening. And I just want to say to y'all, thank you so much for coming. We are far from the end, but we're going to start talking about things like, was it murder or was it a just killing? We're gonna sit down. We're gonna have people from all walks sitting on this platform, and we're gonna have discussions, ask hard questions, hear answers we like and we don't like, because this is the only way we're gonna get to the bottom of this, because it's time for us to start talking about it. So again, I thank every one of you for coming out tonight. This is being recorded. If this has blessed you and you know someone who needs to see it, go on Facebook, share it. If you're not on Facebook and you do YouTube, you can go to our YouTube page as well and catch it there. We just know that this is something that we need to start addressing. I heard my bishop, our bishop here, Stan Holder, who many of you all have met. He's a white man. He's about 60 years old. And I want to tell you a story that he shared with me. He said that he was on staff as the senior pastor of a church down south, and they hired a worship pastor who was black. And his worship pastor only lasted for about a year, year and a half. And over that year and a half, they picketed, they burnt crosses, they did all kinds of ugly stuff until they forced the pastor, who's now our bishop, out, because they refused to have a black man on staff at their church. This was not a long time ago. And he had 175 pastors on the line on Monday night. I was one of them. And he says, people keep asking me, do I stand for Black Lives Matter as an organization? And he says, I think they're asking me the wrong question, because I do not stand for the organization, but I stand for black lives. And he says, I'm tired of so many white people trying to justify that it's okay to not talk about Black Lives Matter because of the stupidity in the Black Lives Matter movement. And he says, so let's not get caught up on an organization, and let's get caught up on a statement that Black Lives Matter. And he says, right now I stand with my black brothers and sisters who feel like they are not important. And when I heard him say it, it was encouraging. Because here's what I've realized. 2 or 3% of police officers have given the other 97% a bad name. Would you agree? So now we've got people uproar, wilding out, angry because of 3%, yet there's 97% who are good. Take that same thing and let's put it into Black Lives Matter. This is the biggest civil rights movement in the entire history of our country. And there are some looters within each city. Let's say there's 50,000 of them. There's not that many, but let's just say there is. If there's 50,000, 30,000, 20,000, do you know how small the percentage is of idiots within the movement? 0.003%. We have labeled an entire movement off of 0.00 something percent. but yet we get angry when people don't jump on board because there's only 3%. And I believe in supporting blue lives. I'm behind 100% police officers. But what I'm not behind is advocating for the 97%, but throwing off the whole movement because of the 0.03%. If we're gonna be fair, we need to be fair. All I'm asking us to do is start looking at facts. Not be so quick to write people off. And this goes to black people too. Some of the folks that are killed that are black had it coming. But let's not take the one or two and dismiss a whole bunch. There's an issue here. And we need to be honest, guys, right? And all I'm asking you to do is let's start being honest. Let's start looking at facts and calling injustice, injustice, calling prejudice, prejudice, calling racism, racism, looking at statistics, at systems, at structures, at things that are in place, and let's just start calling them what they are and standing in solidarity, because the church is what's going to bring revival. It's the church. Y'all not believe that? It's the church. Our world, our country rather, has been founded and formed on the church. The reason the world of America is falling apart is because we have become silent. Abortion would not even be able if the church would stand up. Traditional marriage would be the only thing we knew if churches would stand up. Racism wouldn't exist if churches would stand up. Rewarding women that raise their children without a husband and they're rewarded and given more money, that wouldn't even be an issue if the church would stand up. But we have closed our eyes and we've gotten comfortable in our white picket fence neighborhoods, and we just close our eyes and shut our ears and say, as long as it doesn't hit my house, I'm okay. And that can't be enough anymore. It's time for us to say, I've got a responsibility, and silence isn't it. Let's worship together.
A lot of you may not know this song, but I encourage you right now, take this time to just reflect. Ask God to give you his heart. Right now, as I'm even singing, I'm saying, God, give me your heart. I want to look like you, God, in everything I do. Give me your heart, God. So give me your eyes for just 1 second, and give me your eyes so I can see. And everything that I keep missing, and give me your love for humanity, and give me your arms for the brokenhearted, the ones that are far beyond my reach, and give me your heart for the ones forgotten, and give me your eyes so I can see, and give me your eyes for just 1 second, and give me your eyes so I can see. And everything that I keep missing, and give me your love for humanity, and give me your arms for the brokenhearted, the ones that are far beyond my reach, and give me your heart for the ones forgotten. Give me your eyes so I can see. To a broken world around us, let us be your heart, oh God. To the unreached and forgotten, let us be your healing arms. There's a task you lay before us, your voice we can't ignore. You said go into the nations as your final words. To a broken world around us, let us be everything that I keep missing. Give me your love for humanity. Give me your arms for the brokenhearted, the ones that are far beyond my reach. Give me your heart for the ones forgotten. Give me your eyes so I can see.
Father, we ask you to give us your eyes, that we can be moved with compassion like you were moved with compassion. That we can mourn with those who mourn like you instructed us to mourn with those who mourn. God, help us to identify injustices and stand up. God, I pray that you'll forgive us for wanting to promote our own agendas. Forgive us for being so quickly defensive because of our own bad experiences. God, I pray that you will help us to get our emotions in check where we can just be level-headed and hear. Because God, when we hear, there can be healing. God, I'm sensing that things are shifting and that people are taking away conversations that they heard tonight, and that the process of healing is starting. Father, we honor you for this night, for everyone that spoke, and we just trust that you've got a plan, Lord. I believe when the enemy seems to be at an all-time high working and things are at their worst, I just trust that you're at your best. And I believe that you're up to something. And I pray now as we go our various ways back into our communities, in our circles, that we will be different. May it start with us. God, we honor you and we thank you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. God bless you. Thank you all for coming tonight. We love you so much. Find somebody and give them a Corona fist bump or something for me. Can you do that? Find somebody who don't look like you too and give them a Corona fist bump.